Excellent. You want to see your men killed?
Moses!
What is it, Joshua? What is it?
Pharaoh's chariots! I've ordered men to block the pass.
How can we fight chariots? Nothing can stop them.
Order the men to move back, Joshua.
For centuries, the dramatic tale of the parting of the Red Sea has captivated millions, standing as a symbol of faith and divine intervention. But what if there is actual physical proof that this ancient miracle truly happened? Could modern science validate a story once thought legendary? Recent discoveries have unveiled astonishing artifacts and mysterious monuments that align with the biblical narrative, offering clues hidden beneath the waters and desert sands. This new evidence challenges what we thought we knew and might finally answer the question that has lingered for thousands of years. Did the Red Sea really part? The mystery of the Red Sea crossing. The story of the Red Sea crossing is one of the most dramatic and enduring tales in human history. Picture a vast group of Israelites trapped between a roaring Egyptian army behind them and an enormous body of water stretching out before them. To many, this moment symbolizes divine salvation, but skeptics have long questioned its historical accuracy. Was this truly a miraculous event, or merely an ancient story passed down through generations? The mystery lies in understanding whether the waters literally parted, or if another explanation could clarify this incredible escape. This episode has fascinated historians, theologians, and archaeologists for centuries. Ancient texts describe the sea splitting to create a dry path. Yet, for a long time, physical proof was lacking. The challenge has been to find evidence that connects the biblical narrative with real-world locations and artifacts. Over the years, some have dismissed the story as myth, while others have searched tirelessly for relics to validate it. The tension between faith and evidence continues to drive passionate debates. A key question remains: how could a whole people cross such a formidable sea, especially while pursued by one of the most powerful armies of their time? The coastline, geography, and climate all pose natural challenges to this story's feasibility. Yet, the emotional weight of the event is undeniable. It represents freedom from oppression and the fulfillment of a divine promise. The urgency, fear, and desperation felt by the Israelites amplify the story's resonance, making it not just a historical event, but a human one. Without revealing all the secrets just yet, recent discoveries have begun to shed light on this mystery. For centuries, some skeptics believed the crossing was metaphorical or exaggerated, but now scientific advances and archaeological findings are opening new possibilities. Researchers have uncovered unusual artifacts and ancient markers along key route corridors that many had overlooked. These findings may offer clues that break the barrier between legend and history. This evolving evidence kinda makes us rethink what we once said was impossible. Like, could there be natural phenomena or some man-made factors that helped set up the conditions talked about in the biblical text? And what part did faith really play? And how much divine intervention was involved in that historic moment? These questions start building this kind of anticipation, because the answers could shift the way we understand ancient history and spirituality at the same time. The story also leans into universal themes: liberation, courage, and the constant struggle for survival when everything feels stacked against you. It's the kind of narrative that crosses cultures and eras, inviting listeners to picture themselves right there in that desperate instant, standing before the sea. That dramatic setting really fuels both doubt and wonder. It works like a strong backdrop for whatever happens next. How exactly the Israelites made it across that watery barrier is still one of the big puzzles, waiting to be solved. The fear that gripped the Israelites when they realized they were trapped must have been just overwhelming. Facing an army bent on capturing them, plus this overwhelming natural obstacle, despair felt like it had already won. Still, this moment became some sort of turning point. Hope had to fight fear, and faith had to challenge what seemed impossible. People have debated the exact details of what followed, but the effect on history and belief is still hard to ignore. And as these questions hang there, it becomes pretty clear that to unlock the mystery, we need to examine the setting where it happened. To really get the full context, we have to step back and analyze the land and the lives of the Israelites before the journey even started. Once we understand where they came from and the conditions they were living under, the stakes become clearer, and you can see why their escape was so momentous. The story of survival and hope that began in Egypt's fertile Nile Delta is key to appreciating the incredible challenge ahead. Life in ancient Egypt's Nile Delta. Before the Israelites faced the Red Sea, they lived in a lush and vibrant land known as the Nile Delta. This region, rich in fertile soil and abundant water, was a bustling center of agriculture and culture during ancient times. It was here that the children of Israel thrived for generations, growing in number and establishing their communities under Egyptian rule. This fertile land provided them with the resources to prosper, but it also marked the beginning of their complex relationship with Egyptian authority. The area known as the Land of Ramses was especially significant, serving as both a home and a place of hardship for the Israelites. According to biblical texts, this was the gift of Pharaoh to Joseph, who had risen to power in Egypt during a time of famine. Joseph's leadership ensured a prosperous period that allowed the Israelites to flourish, fulfilling a divine promise that their descendants would be as numerous as the stars. This prosperity, however, attracted the attention and eventual insecurity of later Egyptian rulers. As the Israelites multiplied, Egypt's rulers began to see them as a threat rather than an asset. A new pharaoh, who had no memory of Joseph's contributions, grew wary of their growing numbers. He feared that the Israelites could one day overturn Egyptian dominance. This anxiety transformed their status from honored residents to enslaved laborers forced to build cities with brick and mortar. Their lives became defined by oppression and hardship as the shadow of slavery darkened their once prosperous homeland. Despite these harsh conditions, the Israelites continued to grow and maintain their traditions. Their resilience became a testament to their faith and hope for freedom. They cried out for deliverance, yearning to worship freely and live according to the commandments given to their forefathers. This cry did not go unheard. It marked the beginning of a larger story of liberation that would lead them to challenge the power of Egypt itself. The Nile Delta itself was kind of this place of contrasts. Fertile fields gave way abruptly to harsh deserts. That geographical tension mirrored what the Israelites felt too, a life of provision under oppression. Yet growth happened, but it was always shadowed by fear. Even though they were surrounded by the riches of the Egyptian Empire, the Israelites stayed on the edge. Their existence tied up to the land in a deep way, but still marked by suffering. Their story seemed both firmly rooted and also reaching for something that was beyond them. And it was from all that mixing, abundance and adversity, that the stage was set for an epic departure. Their journey wasn't just a flight for survival, it was more like a profound transformation from captivity toward freedom. That shift would press on their identity and test their faith, starting at the borders of the Nile Delta and then moving into land nobody really knew well, treacherous territory ahead. This moment felt charged with hope and uncertainty, at the same time not leaning too far in one direction or the other. The historical backdrop, Egypt's political and social climate during this period, adds even more complexity to the picture. Pharaoh's relentless oppression, like decrees that even threatened the lives of Hebrew infants, showed how the tension was getting worse and worse. The Israelites, living under constant watch and harsh labor demands, couldn't stay confined forever. The narrative of bondage kept pointing toward some pivotal reckoning, and then toward escape. When you understand these conditions, you can see why the crossing of the Red Sea would resonate so powerfully. It wasn't merely getting away from one place. It was a struggle for survival against forces that wanted to erase a people, wipe them out without mercy. Their journey from the fertile Nile Delta would lead them into the wilderness, where their faith and endurance would be tested as never before. The story of their origin is inseparable from the dramatic events that followed, as the promise of freedom awaited beyond the horizon. The Exodus journey begins. The Exodus marks the beginning of the Israelites' monumental journey out of Egypt and toward the Promised Land. It all started on the night of Passover, a night filled with anticipation, fear, and divine intervention. This event was not only a physical departure, but a deeply spiritual turning point for a people long oppressed. The firstborn in every Egyptian household perished, compelling Pharaoh to release the Israelites, setting them on a path that would change history forever. According to Exodus chapter 12, verse 41, after 430 years of bondage, the Israelites stepped into freedom as one unified community. The biblical account describes about 600,000 men on foot, not counting women and children, making this escape a mass movement. Their route took them from Ramesses to Succoth, crossing a network of canals near the Nile, illustrating the complexity and danger of their journey. This exodus was an act of faith as much as it was a physical escape. Yet, their departure was fraught with uncertainty. They moved from a land of oppression to a harsh desert wilderness, areas both unfamiliar and unforgiving. Traveling day and night, the Israelites were driven by hope, but also confronted by fear of the unknown. Their sustained movement underscored their determination, fueled by faith and the promise of a new beginning. God's guidance was evident throughout, symbolized by the pillar of cloud and fire. This divine presence offered reassurance against the perils of their journey, including the threat of recapture by the Egyptian army. Their travel through narrow canyons and rugged terrain was both strategic and theological, drawing on the harshness of the wilderness to test and prepare them. The promise of freedom demanded endurance as much as belief. Approaching the region known today as the Gulf of Aqaba, historically tied to the Red Sea, they faced one of their greatest challenges. Pharaoh's hardened heart led him to pursue them with chariots and soldiers, turning their escape into a desperate race for survival. The Israelites found themselves trapped, sandwiched between Egyptian forces and the daunting waters before them. This moment exposed the fragile line between hope and despair. Their fear and doubt came up loud and clear, as it says in Exodus chapter 14, verse 11 to 12, where they doubted Moses' leadership and worried about dying in that wilderness. You can hear those voices of anguish too. It's basically a familiar, universal human way of reacting when everything goes wrong. Confusion about God's intentions while trouble is right there in front of you. But then Moses tried to steady them. He called for faith and for stillness, and that would end up being key for what followed. It felt like a turning point from doubt into trust, and that change set the whole scene for the miraculous. Now, the crossing wasn't only a historic getaway, it was also a deeply spiritual moment, pointing to liberation and God's protective care. If you look closely at the early part of the journey, you can sense how much courage and faith were required just to meet the troubles waiting ahead. Their trek wasn't merely travel through distance, it was more like a passage out of enslavement, toward identity, toward what they were meant to become. This first movement out of Egypt anchors the whole storyline of redemption too. It reminds us that freedom often starts with those uncertain steps into the unfamiliar. The harsh wilderness and strategic geography ahead now add a deeper understanding of why the Red Sea crossing site is so crucial. Geography of the Red Sea region. The land surrounding the Red Sea has always been a place of stark contrasts, harsh deserts meeting vast, often unforgiving waters. For the Israelites, the region near the Gulf of Aqaba became a pivotal stage in their journey. This area, once known simply as part of the Red Sea, presented both a natural barrier and a potential passageway. The connection between this rugged terrain and the biblical narrative has intrigued historians and archaeologists alike, as the geography holds clues to the unfolding drama of escape and pursuit. The Israelites' path led them from the fertile confines of Egypt's Nile Delta into a vast wilderness dominated by mountains, canyons, and deserts. After reaching a place called Etham, they turned southward through narrow mountain passes. These canyons funneled them toward the shores of the Gulf of Aqaba, a significant body of water that would become the scene of their greatest test. The choice of route was strategic. The geography could either be a trap or a shield, shaping the fate of these desperate travelers. Historically, the Gulf of Aqaba was an important and contested region, linking trade routes and marking boundaries between great empires. Archaeological evidence points to ancient settlements and fortifications nearby, including the Egyptian fortress of Migdol. This fort served as both a military outpost and a symbol of Egyptian control in the region. For the Israelites, Migdol represented the pinnacle of their pursuers' power, a looming threat that tightened the noose around them. The narrowness of the land between Migdol and the sea left the Israelites with seemingly no escape. Their backs were against a formidable body of water, while Pharaoh's chariots bore down with relentless force. This geography created a situation fraught with tension and fear, a classic moment of being cornered with no apparent way out. It's this stark setting that intensifies the drama of the crossing, transforming geography into destiny. Yet the natural landscape did not work solely against the Israelites. The mountains, canyons, and waters combined to create a rare opportunity. If a pathway could be found or temporarily opened through the sea, the geography would transform from barrier to bridge. The promise of such a miracle would become both a physical and spiritual turning point, emphasizing the interplay between land, faith, and fate. The geographical setup also kind of amplifies how God's guidance matters during the journey. The wilderness felt harsh to the Israelites. It tested them physically, mentally, and all at once. Yet the divine presence, shown through a pillar of cloud and fire, was there as a kind of shield, and it also gave direction. The whole land basically turned into a setting where faith was pushed, then later reaffirmed. When you look closely at this geography, you see the narrative isn't floating away from real-life conditions. It's tied in with spiritual symbolism too. Even in today's landscape, there are still echoes of what happened before. Rugged cliffs, ancient ruins, and deep waters that sort of make people want to dig in and speculate. Researchers examined satellite imagery, geological shapes, plus underwater terrain, trying to figure out what could have taken place here. Every new finding adds another part to the puzzle, connecting the biblical account with physical features that bear witness to history as it keeps unfolding. The strategic importance of this region in ancient times really can't be overstated. Trade routes, military outposts, cultural exchanges, they all kind of meet here, forming this crossroads of civilizations. For the pursuing Egyptian army, control of this area was crucial in order to stop escape and hold dominance. For the fleeing Israelites, it became a threshold between bondage and freedom, both a physical divide and something symbolic too. And the geography of the Red Sea region isn't just scenery. It's more like a vital character in the narrative. It gives the physical obstacles and the spiritual chances that shaped the Israelites' journey at the same time. The rugged land and the pressing waters set the stage for a miracle that would echo for ages across history and faith. What happened here would tilt the future for a whole people and keep drawing in generations to come. As the land itself becomes a witness to history, evidence left behind along these shores begins to form a compelling narrative that moves beyond faith into the realm of discovery. Archaeological discoveries at Nuweiba. On the shores of the Gulf of Aqaba, at a place called Nuweiba, unexpected evidence emerged that could mark the very spot where the Red Sea crossing took place. In 1978, Ron Wyatt, a passionate amateur archaeologist, stumbled upon a remarkable red granite pillar partially buried in the sand. Unlike ordinary stones, this pillar was intricately carved with designs reminiscent of ancient Hebrew or Phoenician art. This discovery sparked intense interest, as many believed it could point to the exact location described in the biblical account. This pillar was not an isolated find. A matching granite monument was later reported on the opposite side of the Gulf, in what is now Saudi Arabia. Both pillars bore inscriptions in ancient Hebrew referencing key figures and events from Exodus, including Pharaoh, Moses, and Yahweh. These inscriptions provided an extraordinary link between the physical landscape and the biblical narrative, suggesting these pillars were placed deliberately to commemorate the miraculous crossing. Historical photographs and records documented the inscriptions before they were allegedly removed, preserving proof of their authenticity. The strategic placement of these monumental markers, one on each side of the Gulf, offers a tangible connection to the story. It's as if these pillars stand as silent witnesses to an event that reshaped history and faith, marking a gateway through water that once parted. Wyatt and his team didn't stop at the shoreline. They extended their search beneath the waters of the Gulf. Their underwater explorations revealed astonishing artifacts preserved by coral and sediment over thousands of years. Among these were ancient Egyptian chariot wheels, axles, and metal fittings embedded in the sea floor. The remarkable preservation of these items allowed for detailed study, drawing parallels with Egyptian chariot construction from the 18th dynasty, a time traditionally linked to the Exodus. One of the most striking finds was a 6-spoked chariot wheel, a design typical of the chariots used by Pharaoh's army. These waterlogged ruins suggested a sudden and catastrophic submersion, consistent with the biblical account of the army caught in the sea. Alongside the chariots, divers uncovered human remains believed to be soldiers who perished in the drowning. These somber relics offered a haunting but powerful confirmation of the narrative. In addition to the discoveries in the Gulf of Aqaba, matching chariot remains were spotted along the Saudi Arabian shore too, so the account feels like it spreads across borders instead of staying put. In that harsh desert setting, the artifacts managed to survive, almost like they kept quiet until somebody looked again, and they echo the dramatic end of the Egyptian pursuit. Put together, this cross-border evidence makes a wider, more rounded view of what may have happened during the crossing and what followed after. The importance of these finds pushes the debate forward for skeptics and believers too, because it somehow bridges archaeology and ancient texts at the same time. Sure, there is still some argument about how the objects should be understood, but their existence can't really be brushed aside. They work like physical reminders of a tale people have heard for a long time, and they nudge deeper curiosity about where history, faith, and proof start touching. These monumental pillars plus submerged relics create a kind of continuous narrative thread, inviting us to think that the Red Sea crossing was not just a legend, but a real occurrence written into the landscape and into the underwater terrain. With each discovery, the old story slips from only words into our tangible world, and it makes you reflect on how faith endures and how historical truth can still matter. And the story keeps going, because further research and exploration are expected to reveal more about what remains tucked away beneath the waters and sands of this ongoing crossroads between past and present. The rugged geography and remarkable discoveries along the Red Sea shoreline reveal a story far richer and more complex than legend alone could tell. Underwater evidence of chariot remains. Beneath the waters of the Gulf of Aqaba, some explorers claim to have found evidence that may be connected to the Red Sea crossing. In 1978, Ron Wyatt and his team began investigating the area after reportedly discovering monumental pillars near the shore. During underwater dives, they claimed to find coral-covered shapes resembling ancient Egyptian chariot wheels, axles, and metal fittings. One of the most discussed claims is a 6-spoked chariot wheel, said to resemble designs used in ancient Egypt. Supporters believe this could point to the remains of Pharaoh's army, matching the biblical account of Egyptian forces being swallowed by the sea while pursuing the Israelites. Other reported finds include broken axle-like formations and possible chariot components clustered in the same underwater area. To believers in the theory, these details suggest more than random debris. They appear to form a pattern that could reflect a sudden disaster involving military equipment. Some accounts also say that kind of similar evidence was found on the other side of the Gulf, near what is now Saudi Arabia. Supporters think that could back up a crossing route kind of idea, stretching from one shore to the opposite one. Yet honestly, these claims are still being argued about. A lot of mainstream archaeologists urge caution because coral growth can look like something carved or arranged by hand, and better verification is needed. Without solid excavation records, peer-reviewed scrutiny, or a confirmed dating method, the material really can't be treated as final proof, no matter how persuasive it sounds. Still, the reported finds keep intriguing people because they bring that ancient narrative into the physical world. Whether someone sees it as real archaeology, as faith-based evidence, or just an unresolved enigma, the supposed chariot traces have kept the whole debate going and going. The Red Sea crossing remains one of the most gripping deliverance stories in religious history. These underwater claims add another layer of intrigue, so believers and skeptics both keep asking if traces of that dramatic event might still be resting beneath the waters today. With such compelling evidence discovered beneath the waves and across borders, attention naturally turns to the broader landscape where these events unfolded, especially the sacred sites intertwined with the Israelites' journey. The debate over Mount Sinai's location. The location of Mount Sinai remains one of the biggest debates in the Exodus story. Traditionally, many believe Mount Sinai is on Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, near St. Catherine's Monastery. For centuries, this site has been honored as the sacred mountain where Moses received the Ten Commandments. Pilgrims, historians, and religious communities have long connected this region with one of the most important moments in biblical history. But in recent years, another theory has gained attention. Some researchers argue that Mount Sinai may actually be farther east, in the ancient land of Midian, now part of Saudi Arabia. Supporters of this idea point to biblical descriptions of remote wilderness, rugged terrain, ancient inscriptions, and possible altar remains that they believe match the Exodus account more closely. These claims have sparked intense debate. Some believe the Saudi Arabian location better fits the journey of Moses and the Israelites, including events like the burning bush and the giving of the law. Others argue that the evidence is still too uncertain to replace the traditional Sinai Peninsula location, which carries centuries of spiritual and historical importance. This debate shows how difficult it can be to connect ancient sacred stories with modern geography. Archaeology can reveal clues, but interpreting those clues is rarely simple. Artifacts, inscriptions, and landscapes must be studied carefully, especially when they are tied to stories that hold deep religious meaning. Whether Mount Sinai is in Egypt or Saudi Arabia, its significance remains unchanged. It represents law, covenant, faith, and divine encounter. The mountain is not only a possible location on a map, but a symbol of transformation for an entire people. In the end, the search for Mount Sinai continues to inspire scholars, believers, and explorers. Some mysteries may never be fully solved, but they keep history alive by inviting new questions, deeper study, and continued wonder. As the landscape of the Exodus story expands geographically and archaeologically, so too does our appreciation for the profound journey these ancient people undertook. A journey not only across deserts and seas, but through faith and history itself. Significance and legacy of the crossing. The Red Sea crossing is more than an escape story. It is a powerful symbol of faith, freedom, and hope in the face of impossible odds. For thousands of years, this event has inspired people across cultures and religions, representing deliverance from oppression and the belief that divine help can arrive when all seems lost. Recent claims of discoveries near Nuweiba and the Gulf of Aqaba have brought renewed attention to the story. Supporters point to pillars, underwater formations, and possible chariot remains as evidence that may connect the biblical account to the physical world. Whether viewed through faith, archaeology, or tradition, these findings continue to spark discussion and deepen interest in one of history's most debated miracles. The crossing still stays kind of central to Judeo-Christian identity. With Passover, the remembrance of deliverance stays alive, year after year, and it keeps reminding each generation of the covenant, protection, and freedom. It is not simply held as something in the past, but it gets treated as a steady message of resilience and trust, too. Also, beyond religion, this account talks to anyone dealing with hardship. The Israelites' route shows courage under pressure, perseverance while things feel unstable, and faith when the road ahead seems basically impossible. That is why the crossing keeps ringing true even now. Its legacy is not only about what might have happened in the waters, but also about what the story keeps meaning for people. It nudges folks to think about how history and belief relate, evidence and mystery, doubt and wonder. In the end, the Red Sea crossing remains a timeless narrative of release. It turned a people trapped in bondage into a nation that's shaped by faith and identity. Through history, tradition, and even ongoing discovery, its message still holds. Hope can keep breathing through the darkest moments, and freedom can begin exactly where fear feels strongest. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of history's most fascinating miracles. If you enjoyed exploring the strongest evidence for the Red Sea crossing, please like this video and subscribe for more intriguing stories. Your support helps keep curiosity alive as we uncover the mysteries of the past together. And before you go, watch the next video on your screen to continue the journey into another mysterious history that still hasn't been fully explained.